London, winter 1817. By the time Amelia Carter stepped beneath the lantern-lit archway of Hensley House, she had already prepared herself for invisibility. The snow that afternoon had been thin and uncertain, melting into the cobblestones before it could gather courage. The air held that particular London chill that did not bite so much as seep into sleeves, into lungs, into resolve. Amelia drew her shawl closer as the carriage rolled away, leaving her and her younger brother Thomas standing before the wide marble steps. "Are you certain you wish to stay long?" Thomas asked quietly. He was 17, still carrying traces of boyhood in his face, though the last 2 years had tried to carve them away. The sons of respectable men did not endure the whispers he endured at school. He pretended not to hear them. Amelia knew better. "We will stay as long as is polite," she replied, steady as ever. "Politeness costs nothing." Thomas gave a faint smile at that, though they both knew politeness had cost them nearly everything. Inside, Hensley House blazed with light. Crystal chandeliers hung like inverted constellations, refracting gold across silk gowns and polished boots. Music drifted from the far end of the ballroom, strings measured and controlled. The room was filled with conversation that never quite rose above refinement. Amelia paused just beyond the entrance, allowing her eyes to adjust. Lady Hensley stood near the center of the room, resplendent in deep burgundy velvet, her jewels catching every turn of her head. She was greeting guests with the air of someone who curated not only events but reputations. Once, years ago, she had been a frequent visitor to the Carter household. Once she had called Amelia "dear girl," with warmth that seemed genuine. That was before the investigation. Before Parliament had turned suspicious eyes toward Amelia's father. Before words like disloyalty and misconduct had begun to circulate without proof but with devastating effect. No charges had ever been brought. No conviction declared. But in London, accusation alone was sufficient. The Carters had not been ruined by law. They had been ruined by doubt. "Amelia," Thomas murmured, drawing her back to the present. "They're looking." She did not need to follow his gaze to know he was right. Heads had turned, not in admiration but in recognition. Recognition was more dangerous. Recognition carried memory. Her gown was dove gray, simple but carefully pressed. The cut was modest, last season's fashion softened by careful tailoring. She wore no jewels beyond a thin silver chain at her throat, a gift from her mother. Her gloves had been repaired invisibly at the seams. Amelia did not try to compete with the women shimmering around her. She had long since learned that attempting to rival opulence without fortune only invited sharper cruelty. She inclined her head politely to those who met her gaze. Some returned the gesture with tight smiles. Others looked away entirely. "Miss Carter," came a voice smooth with practiced civility. Amelia turned to find Lady Hensley herself approaching. "My lady," Amelia replied, curtsying with flawless precision. "How very good of you to attend," Lady Hensley said. The pause before good lingered too long to be accidental. "I do admire perseverance." Amelia met her eyes calmly. One must admire what one possesses. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Lady Hensley's expression. Annoyance, perhaps. It vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Do enjoy yourself," she said lightly. "Though I suspect you prefer observation to participation." "Observation is rarely disappointing," Amelia replied. Lady Hensley smiled in a way that revealed nothing, then turned to greet a newly arrived baronet. Thomas leaned closer. "You shouldn't have said that." "I said nothing impolite," Amelia answered. "That's not what I meant." She placed a reassuring hand on his sleeve. "Go. You'll find someone your age by the card tables. Do not hover beside me. It invites speculation." He hesitated. "If anyone speaks to you poorly, I will survive it." He nodded reluctantly and moved away. Amelia made her way toward the edge of the ballroom, choosing a position near one of the tall windows overlooking the snow-dusted courtyard. From there she could see without being surrounded. It was a strategy she had refined over the past 3 seasons. A pair of young women stood not far away, their voices pitched low but not low enough. "She still comes," one said. "Of course she does," the other replied. It's her only means of reminding us she exists. I heard her father nearly fled the country. I heard worse. Amelia did not flinch. If she reacted to every whisper, she would never stop reacting. The music shifted into a livelier set. Couples formed across the floor. Laughter rippled through the room as partners took their places. No one approached Amelia. She had not expected them to. It was almost a relief. Rejection was easier when anticipated. Then quite suddenly the room altered. The shift was subtle but undeniable, like a draft passing through a sealed chamber. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. Laughter thinned. Heads turned toward the entrance once more. Amelia followed their gaze. He stood just inside the doorway, as though he had paused to assess the temperature of the room before stepping fully into it. Julian Ravenscroft, Marquess of Thornfield. She recognized him at once, though she had never spoken to him. His reputation preceded him by several years and several degrees of severity. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black so precisely tailored it seemed architectural. His dark hair was worn slightly longer than current fashion dictated, brushed back without ornament. His expression was not stern so much as controlled, every line of his face deliberate. He did not smile as Lady Hensley hurried forward to greet him. "Lord Thornfield," she exclaimed, delighted in a way that suggested calculation. "What an unexpected pleasure." He inclined his head. "Lady Hensley." His voice carried easily, low and even, without the need for projection. "You honor us," she continued. "We had not expected you in London this season." "I rarely announce my movements," he replied. A faint murmur rippled outward. Amelia observed him as she would a figure in a painting, detached, analytical. He was not handsome in the conventional sense. There was no softness to him. But there was something arresting in the way he occupied space without apology. He did not scan the room for admiration. He surveyed it, as though assessing a negotiation. Amelia returned her gaze to the window. Men like Lord Thornfield did not notice women like her. And if they did, it was rarely to her advantage. She did not see Lady Hensley approach until the woman's shadow crossed the floor beside her. "Miss Carter," Lady Hensley said sweetly, "you appear quite alone." "I assure you, my lady, I am accustomed to it." "How unfortunate." Amelia sensed the pivot before it occurred. "Our distinguished guest seems equally alone," Lady Hensley continued, raising her voice just enough for those nearby to register the exchange. "And I find it dreadfully inhospitable to leave a gentleman unattended." Amelia's pulse slowed rather than quickened. She had learned that composure was most effective when unhurried. "Then I trust someone more suitable will rectify the oversight," she said. Lady Hensley's smile sharpened. "On the contrary, I believe you are precisely suited." A small circle of listeners had formed, their interest carefully disguised. Amelia understood. This was to be entertainment. To send the disgraced daughter to engage the most formidable man in the room, what could be more diverting? If he dismissed her, it would confirm her insignificance. If she faltered, it would confirm her desperation. Either outcome would please. Amelia met Lady Hensley's gaze without blinking. "As you wish." Before the hostess could add another polished cruelty, Amelia turned and crossed the ballroom. The distance felt longer than it was. Conversations dimmed as she passed. She could sense attention tightening behind her like a drawn bow. Julian Ravenscroft noticed her approach before she spoke. His eyes, dark and penetrating, settled on her with unsettling directness. She curtsied perfectly. "Lord Thornfield," she said. "Miss Amelia Carter." Silence hovered for a breath too long. He did not look past her. He did not glance toward Lady Hensley. He studied her as though she were a question. "Miss Carter," he said at last. "I assume this introduction was not of your design." The bluntness might have startled another woman. It did not startle Amelia. "No, my lord," she replied evenly. "It was not." A faint shift at the corner of his mouth suggested recognition, not amusement precisely, but acknowledgement. "Then we share circumstance," he said. "I too was maneuvered." She allowed herself the smallest arch of her brow. "It appears we are both considered manageable." His gaze sharpened at that. Do you consider yourself manageable? He asked. Rarely, she answered. Pause. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured toward the seating alcove along the wall. Sit. It was not a command so much as an invitation issued without ceremony. Amelia sat. The music resumed, though more tentatively now, as though the room itself were listening. For a moment, neither spoke. She could feel eyes upon them, measuring, speculating. You attend such gatherings frequently? He asked. When invited, she replied. And you are invited frequently? Less so than I once was. He did not ask why. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Most men could not resist probing scandal. They framed curiosity as concern. You do not appear uncomfortable, he observed. I have had practice, she said. At enduring? At observing. He studied her again. Observation suggests judgment. Not always, she replied. Sometimes it suggests restraint. A faint exhale escaped him, almost a laugh. You are not what I expected, he said. Nor you, she returned. What did you expect? A man who enjoys being watched. His gaze flicked briefly across the ballroom, where several women were indeed watching with unconcealed interest. I do not, he said simply. Then why attend? His answer came without hesitation. Information. Ah. You disapprove? I do not presume to. But you have an opinion. Everyone does, she said. Few admit it. And you? I prefer my opinions unadvertised. A longer silence followed, this one less strained. The music swelled into the opening bars of a waltz. Couples began to assemble once more. He rose without warning and extended his hand. Dance with me. The request landed like a dropped glass. Across the room, conversations faltered again. Amelia hesitated only long enough to measure the consequences. Then she placed her gloved hand in his. They stepped onto the floor. The sensation of his hand at her waist was firm but not possessive. He led with quiet assurance, his movements precise. He did not attempt to draw her closer than propriety allowed. They are staring, she murmured. They are always staring, he replied. You could release me. I could. He did not. They moved through the figures of the dance with measured grace. He did not speak for several turns and she did not fill the silence. You are aware of your reputation, he said at last. I am intimately acquainted with it. And you do not seek to correct it? Correction requires an audience willing to listen. Perhaps you have underestimated your audience. She met his gaze steadily. Have you? A flicker of something, interest perhaps, crossed his face. You speak as though you have studied Parliament, he said. My father served within it for 20 years. And you listened. I listened. And you disagreed? Frequently. Yet you defend him. I defend fairness, she replied. Not perfection. He absorbed that without comment. The music slowed toward its conclusion. Around them whispers thickened. When the final note faded, he did not release her immediately. May I call upon you tomorrow? He asked. The question was simple. The implications were not. Amelia was acutely aware of the silence stretching outward from them like a ripple across water. You may, she said. His nod was slight, almost imperceptible. He released her hand then and stepped back. Across the ballroom, Lady Hensley's smile had frozen. Amelia returned to her place by the window, pulse steady despite the storm gathering around her. Thomas appeared moments later, eyes wide. What have you done? He whispered. Danced, she said. That was not merely a dance. No, she agreed quietly. It was not. From across the room, Julian Ravenscroft did not look at her again. He did not need to. The damage, or the beginning, had already been done. Outside, the snow began to fall again, more certain this time, settling over London as though attempting to soften its edges. Inside, Amelia Carter stood straighter than she had all evening. For the first time in years she had not been invisible. And London, she knew, would not forgive that easily. By morning, London had already decided what the dance meant. It had not been interpreted as curiosity. It had not been interpreted as coincidence. It had not even been interpreted as boldness. It had been interpreted as strategy. Amelia Carter stood at the narrow writing desk in the front room of their Bloomsbury townhouse, unfolding the second anonymous note delivered before noon. The handwriting was disguised, heavy strokes, uneven slant, but the intention was clear. Ambition is unbecoming in a woman whose family has already overreached. She read it once, then folded it carefully and placed it atop the first. Her mother watched from the armchair by the hearth, hands folded tightly in her lap. "You need not read them," she said softly. "I prefer to know the shape of what approaches us," Amelia replied. Thomas paced near the window. "This is because of him." Amelia did not answer immediately. Outside, Bloomsbury Square appeared unchanged. Carriages rolled past. Vendors called their wares. Children darted across the pavement in woolen coats too thin for the cold. London never paused for private storms. "Yes," she said finally. "It is because of him." The knock came shortly thereafter. Not hurried. Not uncertain. Thomas stiffened. "If it's another?" "It is not," Amelia said. She did not know how she knew. Only that she did. She opened the door herself. Julian Ravenscroft stood on the step, coat dark against the pale winter light, gloves in one hand, hat in the other. He had not sent a card ahead. He had not concealed his carriage around the corner. He had come as though there were nothing to hide. "Miss Carter," he said. "My lord." There was no visible reaction from him, no apology, no defensiveness. Only that same contained steadiness she had observed the night before. "May I enter?" "You may." He stepped inside, and the house seemed to shift slightly around his presence, not because it was inadequate but because he was accustomed to larger rooms. Her mother rose. Julian bowed with precise courtesy. "Mrs. Carter." She inclined her head. "Lord Thornfield." There was no disdain in his tone, no condescension in his posture. Amelia noticed that immediately. They sat in the modest front room. The furnishings were worn but meticulously cared for. The wallpaper had faded slightly near the window where sunlight lingered in the afternoons. A small bookshelf stood beside the hearth, volumes arranged with careful economy. Julian's gaze moved across the room once, absorbing detail without commentary. "I am aware," he began evenly, "that my visit may draw attention." "It already has," Amelia replied. He looked at her. How severe. She handed him one of the folded notes. He read it without visible reaction, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "There will be more," she said. "Yes." "You do not appear surprised." "I am not." Thomas could no longer remain silent. "You knew this would happen?" Julian turned toward him. "I anticipated resistance." "This is not resistance," Thomas snapped. "It is attack." Amelia placed a hand lightly on her brother's arm. "Thomas." Julian did not take offense. "You are correct," he said to the young man. "It is attack." "Then why?" "Because retreat validates it." The words hung in the room. Amelia studied him carefully. "You believe defiance will quiet them. I believe consistency will." "That is not the same thing." A faint shift of acknowledgement crossed his face. "No," he said. "It is not." Her mother cleared her throat gently. "My lord, we are not accustomed to strategic wars." Julian regarded her respectfully. "Nor should you be." "And yet we are in one," she replied. "Yes." Silence settled for a moment. Amelia drew a breath. "Why?" He did not pretend to misunderstand. "Why persist?" she clarified. "Because I choose to," he said simply. "That is not explanation." "It is sufficient explanation for me." She held his gaze. "It may not be sufficient for us." Something shifted in his expression then, not irritation, not impatience, but consideration. "I do not act impulsively, Miss Carter," he said. "If I were uncertain of my intention, I would not be here." "And your intention?" "To continue." The word landed heavier than it sounded. Thomas let out a short breath. "Continue what?" Julian's answer was direct. "Acquaintance." Amelia's lips curved slightly. London does not interpret acquaintance so modestly. London does not interpret modestly at all, he replied. Despite herself, she almost smiled. Almost. A carriage rolled slowly past outside. The sound of wheels against stone lingered longer than necessary. They are watching, Thomas muttered. They will grow bored, Julian said. Amelia looked at him steadily. You misunderstand London. I do not, he answered. Then you underestimate its appetite. He considered that. Possibly, he admitted. It was the first concession she had heard from him. He rose after a measured interval, not lingering beyond propriety. I will walk with you tomorrow, he said, turning to Amelia. Hyde Park. At noon. It was not phrased as a question. Very well, she replied. He inclined his head to her mother and brother, then departed. From the window, Thomas watched as Julian's carriage pulled away openly, crest visible, no attempt at discretion. They will tear him apart, Thomas said. No, Amelia answered quietly. They will attempt to tear me apart. Hyde Park was bright with winter sunlight the following afternoon, the sky a pale, brittle blue. The air carried the sharpness of cold that stung the lungs clean. Julian was already there when Amelia arrived. He stood near the gravel path, hands clasped loosely behind his back, coat buttoned high against the wind. Several riders circled at a distance. A cluster of ladies strolled slowly beneath bare-branched trees. Every pair of eyes tracked her approach. You are punctual, he observed. So are you. They began walking side by side. At first, conversation was light, surface-level observations about the season, about Parliament reconvening. But beneath it ran an undercurrent neither acknowledged aloud. The distance between them was proper. The scrutiny was not. Two women passed them, their murmured exchange intentionally audible. Brazen. Calculated. Amelia's stride did not falter. You are not obligated to endure this, she said after several moments. Nor are you. I have endured it before. For reasons beyond your control, he said. This is different. Yes, she agreed. This is voluntary. He stopped walking. She did the same. You believe I have placed you in jeopardy, he said. I believe proximity to you amplifies scrutiny. And absence would silence it? No, she admitted. But it would reduce it. He studied her face carefully. Do you wish me absent? The question was quiet, direct. She did not answer immediately. I wish my family untouched, she said finally. His gaze hardened, not toward her but toward something distant and unseen. Your brother attends school still? Yes. I will make inquiries. That is unnecessary. It is done, he replied. There was no arrogance in it, only resolve. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut across the air. Miss Carter. Lady Hensley approached with two companions in pale winter cloaks, their expressions bright with curated innocence. Lord Thornfield, Lady Hensley added, inclining her head. My lady. Her gaze lingered on Amelia. I trust you are finding the season invigorating. I find it instructive, Amelia said. How admirable, Lady Hensley replied smoothly. One does wonder, however, whether certain alliances may prove precarious. Julian's expression did not shift. If you refer to me, he said evenly, you need not obscure it. Lady Hensley's smile tightened. I refer only to reputation, she said. Reputation, he answered calmly, is often a reflection of those who discuss it. A flicker of irritation passed across her features. Of course, she said lightly. One hopes no one is misled. Julian turned fully toward her. I am not easily misled. The conversation ended there. Lady Hensley withdrew with her companions, though not without casting one final assessing glance over Amelia. They resumed walking. That was unwise, Amelia murmured. On the contrary, he replied. It was necessary. For you perhaps. For both of us. She did not argue further. By evening the broadsheet appeared. It was printed on cheap paper, distributed by boys who darted through the streets with eager speed. Thomas burst into the house holding a crumpled copy. They're selling it for a penny, he said breathlessly. Amelia took it from him. The headline read, "The Fallen Daughter's Ambition." The article did not name her directly. It did not need to. It described a certain young woman of tarnished lineage who had sought to secure restoration through calculated intimacy. Each sentence was crafted to imply without stating, to accuse without evidence. Her mother sank slowly into the nearest chair. Julian arrived within the hour. He entered without flourish, eyes already sharpened. "You have seen it?" he said. "Yes." He took the paper from her hands and read it once, jaw tightening more visibly this time. "This is political," he said. "Everything is political," Amelia replied. He looked at her sharply. "You do not deny the risk." "I do not deny reality." He stepped closer. "Say the word," he said quietly, "and I will end this." Her breath caught. "End what?" "Our association." The word hovered between them. She studied him carefully. "You would?" she asked. "Yes." There was no hesitation. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than persistence would have. "And what would that accomplish?" she asked. "It would reduce immediate pressure. And validate the accusation." Pause. "Yes," he admitted. She folded her hands together. "Then no," she said softly. The word surprised even her. Thomas stared at her. "Amelia." She shook her head slightly. "If we retreat now," she continued, eyes still on Julian, "we concede narrative." "And if we persist?" he asked. "We endure escalation." Silence. He inclined his head once. "Very well." Escalation came swiftly. Invitations that had already been scarce ceased entirely. Two families who had maintained cautious civility crossed the street rather than greet her. Thomas returned from school with a split lip after a classmate repeated a line from the broadsheet. Julian's inquiries ensured the boy responsible was disciplined, but discipline did not erase humiliation. On the fourth day, Amelia received a formal note requesting her presence at Thornfield House. She hesitated before going. The Ravenscroft residence stood imposing and symmetrical, its facade immaculate. Inside, the air felt heavier, older. Julian met her in a smaller sitting room, away from the main hall. "You are aware my uncle has arrived," he said. "I assumed as much." "He requested this meeting." "Requested." "Insisted." A knock sounded before she could reply. The door opened. Lord Ravenscroft entered, silver-haired, posture rigid, gaze assessing. He did not bow. "Miss Carter," he said, voice measured. "My lord." He did not offer her a seat. "I will speak plainly," he said. "This association is untenable." Amelia remained standing. "On what grounds?" "Political, social, practical." "And moral?" she asked calmly. A faint narrowing of his eyes. "Do not attempt cleverness," he said. "I attempt clarity." He turned slightly toward Julian. "You will end this." Julian did not move. "No." The word landed like stone. Lord Ravenscroft's jaw tightened. "You risk decades of alliance." "I risk nothing that was not already fragile." "And for what?" his uncle demanded. "For scandal." Julian's gaze shifted briefly to Amelia, then back. "For choice." Silence thickened. Lord Ravenscroft turned to Amelia again. "You will be compensated." The word was delivered without embarrassment. Amelia felt the weight of it. Money to disappear. Money to quiet discomfort. "How much?" she asked. Julian's head snapped slightly toward her, but he did not interrupt. The sum named was staggering. Enough to restore her family entirely. Enough to secure Thomas's future beyond question. Enough to erase years of strain. She inhaled once. "No." The older man's expression hardened. "You would refuse stability?" "I would refuse erasure." Julian's eyes did not leave her face. Lord Ravenscroft exhaled slowly. "You misunderstand your position." "No," she said evenly. "I understand it precisely." He studied her in silence, recalibrating. "This will not end kindly," he said. "It already has not," she replied. He left without further ceremony. The door closed. The room felt suddenly smaller. "You did not have to refuse," Julian said quietly. Yes, she answered. I did. He stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. You intend to leave London? He said. She did not deny it. Yes. When? Soon. To protect them. Yes. And me? She met his gaze steadily. You do not require protection. A long silence passed between them. You are wrong, he said at last. She did not ask how. Instead, she turned toward the window overlooking the snow-covered courtyard. I will not be the instrument of your political undoing, she said softly. And I will not be the instrument of your retreat, he replied. Their eyes met again. For the first time since this began, uncertainty flickered, not about intention but about outcome. Outside, London continued its measured rhythm. Inside, the war between reputation and resolve had fully begun. London did not wait for permission to become cruel. It preferred momentum. By the time Amelia Carter resolved to leave the city, the decision no longer felt dramatic. It felt inevitable. Each day had narrowed her options until departure appeared less like surrender and more like preservation. The trunks were brought down from the attic that morning. Thomas tried to make a joke of it. We've packed in worse weather, but his voice carried strain he could not disguise. Their mother folded linens carefully, as though the orderliness of fabric might impose order on circumstance. Amelia moved through the house with measured efficiency. She had always believed that dignity lay in composure, even when retreating. Outside, Bloomsbury had grown quieter in a way that unsettled her more than noise would have. Neighbors no longer pretended indifference. Curtains shifted openly. Two boys lingered near the corner, glancing toward the house before whispering to one another. Speculation had ripened into spectacle. The final broadsheet had appeared that morning. Ambition meets resistance. This one was less subtle. It suggested that a titled gentleman had been misled by feminine calculation, and would soon regain his senses. It implied, without stating directly, that money had already exchanged hands. Amelia read it without flinching. There was something clarifying about open accusation. It stripped away illusion. You do not have to go, her mother said quietly as Amelia closed the small trunk that held her father's papers. Yes, Amelia replied gently. I do. For how long? Long enough for them to find a new subject. Thomas stood in the doorway. They won't. She looked at him. London does not tire of scandal, he said. It only changes victims. Before she could respond, a sound broke across the afternoon air. Carriage wheels. Not one. Several. Amelia's pulse slowed rather than quickened. She moved toward the window and lifted the curtain. The first carriage bore a crest unmistakable in its detail, silver against black. Julian Ravenscroft did not travel discreetly today. Behind his carriage, two others followed, not belonging to him but drawn by curiosity. Passers-by slowed. A small crowd began to gather instinctively as though pulled by gravity. Thomas swore under his breath. He wouldn't, he said. Amelia did not answer. The carriage door opened. Julian descended without haste, coat dark, posture unyielding. He did not glance at the crowd. He did not acknowledge the murmurs rising around him. He walked directly to the front door. The knock was firm, measured, public. Every eye in the street turned toward the Carter residence. Inside, silence pressed against the walls. Amelia closed the curtain. He knows you intend to leave, her mother said softly. Yes. Will you send him away? Amelia stood very still. No. She opened the door. Cold air rushed in, along with the low hum of gathered voices. Julian stood before her, hat removed, gaze steady. You were not planning to inform me, he said. It was not accusation. It was fact. I had not decided how, she replied. You decided to leave. Yes. A murmur swelled behind him as someone repeated her name aloud. Julian did not turn. Step outside with me, he said. Her heart gave a single hard strike. This is unnecessary, she murmured. It is essential. She glanced briefly over his shoulder. The crowd had thickened. Neighbors, passers-by, two men she recognized from political circles. Even Lady Hensley's carriage had drawn to a slow halt at the edge of the square. This was no longer private. "You understand what you are doing?" she said quietly. "Yes." She hesitated only a second longer. Then she stepped out beside him. The door closed behind her. The cold struck her face sharply, clearing any lingering hesitation. Julian turned, not toward her, but toward the assembled onlookers. He did not raise his voice, yet it carried with startling clarity. "My name is Julian Ravenscroft," he said, "Marquess of Thornfield." As though anyone present required clarification. The title rippled through the crowd anyway. "I am aware," he continued evenly, "that certain narratives have circulated regarding my association with Miss Amelia Carter." Whispers shifted uneasily. He did not glance at her. "They are false." A laugh escaped from somewhere near the back, nervous, uncertain. Julian's gaze sharpened. "I sought her company," he said. "I pursued her acquaintance. I initiated each visit." Amelia felt the air thin in her lungs. "She did not solicit my attention," he continued. "She did not maneuver for it. On the contrary, she attempted to discourage it." The murmur grew louder now, confusion replacing certainty. A man near the front called out, "Then why persist?" Julian's expression did not flicker. "Because I am not easily influenced," he replied. "And because I choose my associations deliberately." Silence followed that. "Miss Carter owes no apology," he said. "No explanation. No defense." His eyes swept across the gathered faces. "If you believe I have been misled," he continued, voice steady, "you misjudge me. If you believe she has manipulated me, you misjudge her." A carriage door opened at the far end of the square. Lady Hensley stepped down, wrapped in pale fur, her expression composed but strained. Julian did not acknowledge her. "I intend," he said calmly, "to marry Miss Carter." The words struck the square like a stone dropped into still water. Gasp! A muffled exclamation. Someone dropped a pamphlet. Amelia's breath left her body entirely. She turned toward him, shock unguarded on her face. "You cannot," she whispered. He met her gaze then fully. "I can." "This is not the way," she said under her breath. "It is precisely the way," he replied just as quietly. The crowd did not disperse at once. It recalibrated. Speculation shifted into something else. Uncertainty, calculation. A marriage would not fit the existing narrative. A marriage would complicate alliances. It would demand reevaluation. Lady Hensley stepped forward, unable to remain silent. "This is highly irregular," she said, voice tight with controlled indignation. "Public declarations are unbecoming." Julian turned his head slightly. "So is public slander," he said. Her lips thinned. "You risk more than reputation," she warned. "I am aware." Amelia found her voice. "Enough," she said softly. The single word carried more weight than volume. Julian looked at her immediately. "Come inside," she said. For a moment, neither moved. Then he inclined his head and followed her back through the door. The square buzzed behind them, energy crackling outward into the city. Inside, warmth felt almost suffocating. Thomas stood frozen near the stairs. Her mother had not moved from the hearth. "What have you done?" Amelia demanded once the door was closed. Julian removed his gloves slowly. "Corrected a lie. You have ignited something far worse." "Perhaps," he conceded. Her hands trembled, not with weakness but with the weight of consequence. "You do not solve scandal by amplifying it," she said. "I do not solve it," he replied. "I replace it." She stared at him. "With what?" she asked. "With certainty." The simplicity of the word unsettled her more than the declaration had. "You cannot decide my life in the street," she said. "I did not." "You announced marriage." "I announced intention." She drew a breath. "You did not consult me." His jaw tightened. "I believed you were leaving to protect yourself from what I should have addressed sooner." "And so you addressed it publicly?" "Yes." Thomas finally found his voice. "You may have made it worse." Julian looked at him calmly. "For whom?" "For her," Thomas said fiercely. Julian's gaze shifted back to Amelia. "I will not withdraw the statement," he said quietly. But I will not compel you. The words settled heavily between them. You think this is noble, she said. I think it is necessary. You think you are protecting me. I am aligning myself. She shook her head. I will not be your rebellion, she said. I will not be the symbol of your defiance against your family. He stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that the space between them felt deliberate. You are neither rebellion nor symbol, he said. You are the woman I intend to marry. Her pulse faltered. That is not the same as choosing me, she replied. His expression shifted just slightly. It is precisely that. No, she said. It is you choosing to fight. And you? He asked. She faltered. And you? He repeated, softer now. What do you choose? The question struck deeper than the declaration outside. Before she could answer, another knock sounded. Controlled. Measured. Julian exhaled once. My uncle, he said. He opened the door himself. Lord Ravenscroft entered without invitation, expression carved from stone. You have made a spectacle, the older man said coldly. Julian did not respond. Lord Ravenscroft's gaze landed on Amelia. You will end this, he said. I will not, she replied. He blinked once, recalibrating. A settlement remains available, he said. It has increased. Julian's jaw tightened visibly. Amelia met the older man's gaze steadily. You misunderstand me still, she said. Do I? He asked sharply. Yes, she answered. You believe my refusal is pride. And it is not? It is preference. Silence fell. I will not vanish to ease discomfort, she continued. Nor will I marry to prove a point. Lord Ravenscroft turned to his nephew. You see, he said. This is untenable. Julian did not break eye contact with Amelia. Then it is my decision to make untenable, he replied. The older man exhaled sharply through his nose. You will regret this. Perhaps, Julian said. Lord Ravenscroft departed without further word. The door closed once more. The house felt smaller still. Julian turned back to Amelia. I will not ask again, he said. If you wish to leave London, I will ensure you depart safely. And if I stay? Then you stay knowing I stand beside you. She studied him carefully. Not in front of me? She asked quietly. Beside. The distinction mattered. Her mother spoke gently from the hearth. Child, what do you want? The question pierced through everything else. What did she want? Not what London expected. Not what Julian declared. Not what scandal demanded. What did she want? She had spent years surviving reaction, enduring commentary, managing perception. Choice had become a foreign concept. Julian waited. He did not reach for her. He did not press. For the first time since the dance, he did nothing but stand and allow her silent space. Outside, the square buzzed with speculation, carriages coming and going, news already spreading through drawing rooms and corridors. Inside, stillness gathered. If we marry, she said finally, it will not be today. His gaze did not waver. No. It will not be because you declared it. No. It will not be because your uncle objects. No. It will be because I decide. Yes. The single word held no impatience. Only agreement. She stepped closer. Then give me time, she said. You have it. How much? As much as you require. She studied him one final moment, searching for impatience, for calculation. She found neither. Very well, she said. He inclined his head once. I will withdraw from public appearances for a fortnight, he said. You may do as you wish without further escalation. And the announcement? She asked. It stands? Of course it did. He did not retract truth. He bowed slightly to her mother and Thomas. Then he left. The square had thinned by the time his carriage departed. London had already begun reshaping the narrative to fit the new information. Amelia stood by the window long after he was gone. You love him, Thomas said quietly. She did not answer at once. I respect him, she said. That is not the same. No, she agreed. 2 weeks later she sent a note to Thornfield House. It contained only a single line. I have made my decision. The wedding was quiet. Not in London. At Thornfield Estate in the countryside, beneath a sky heavy with early spring clouds. No elaborate guest list. No strategic alliances. Her mother stood beside her. Thomas stood taller than he had before. Julian met her at the altar without spectacle. No triumphant smile. No possessive claim. Only steadiness. When he took her hand, it was not to display her. It was to join her. London reacted as it always did, first with outrage, then with adjustment. Scandal lost its edge when faced with permanence. Within months, invitations resumed, cautious at first, then measured. Some doors remained closed. Others reopened. But Amelia Carter, now Marchioness of Thornfield, did not step through them as supplicant. She stepped through them as choice. London had not forgiven her. It had recalculated. And for the first time in years she did not feel the need to endure. She stood.